Welcome to Miller's Military Moments, where you will hear about my Master Sergeant Miller's funny, crazy, exciting, and sometimes even unbelievable moments that occurred during my 20 years of service as a soldier in the United States Army. Make sure to check out, follow, and like the socials that go along with the podcast so you can see photos, videos, and updates to the moments. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter by searching Miller's Military Moments. Disclaimer, all views and opinions are mine and do not reflect the views and opinions of the United States Army or Department of Defense. Welcome, everybody, to episode 2 of Miller's Military Moments, and I am Master Sergeant Jason Miller, your host for today's episode. Thanks again for joining. I know at the end of last week's episode, I talked about I was going to tell you a story about soccer balls and shoes, and I'm going to postpone that. I'm going to push that out, and I know some of y'all are excited. Trust me, I'm excited to tell y'all some of these stories too, but I'm going to push that story, and there's some of y'all that know a little bit about my experiences and have asked about, swimming in Saddam's pool and some of my other interactions with Saddam Hussein, flying in a Black Hawk over Baghdad, and some other instances, and we're going to get to all those stories, okay? I promise. We're going to get to them, but I'm going to today fill you in on kind of my first year in the Army, not quite, probably about first eight months or so, up to Fort Hood, and then we're going to go through probably in the next episode, the first 60 days at Fort Hood, which was really kind of crazy. When I went back and looked at a lot of the things that transpired, it was kind of a crazy, chaotic time. So anyway, that's what we're gonna do today, and because it all sets up for a lot of things that happened throughout my career. We'll talk a little bit about why I served, why I left teaching, and stuff like that, and kind of my age when I left, because that matters. It matters because I wasn't your typical 18-year-old recent high school graduate that left home to join the Army. So I was 25 years old, and when I left for the Army, at the end of July of 2001, and getting ready to turn 26 in September. So again, not that typical 18-year-old. I was married, no kids. So there are definitely some differences. My maturity level a little bit different. Maybe my expectations of what basic training was going to be like. Stuff like that, but also maybe some challenges as far as like missing my family, missing my wife, leaving my wife. We had been married for 4 years at that point, and so that was pretty hard, leaving her for the first time like that. And obviously, come to find out, I'll leave her many other times throughout my 20 years. But to say, too, we are happily married and still together after 23 years. So, so that was definitely a challenge. But, being 25 and into 26, I mean, maybe some of the physical things were a little bit challenging, but not too much. So why did I leave teaching? And some of y'all definitely may be asking that and wondering that. Well, go back to my childhood, really. I had grown up always wanting to serve in the military. Felt like it was my patriotic duty, if I was able, to serve. I studied World War II a lot growing up and read books as often as I could on the subject. Some on the Korean War and some on the Vietnam War as well. And I admired definitely the greatest generation in World War II. Their toughness, courage, how they could overcome a lot of obstacles and challenges in battles and stuff like that to win the battles and win the war, and how the whole country really, supported them, kind of came behind everybody and pushed for us to win. So I really liked them for that, and loved learning about it, and really appreciated them and for everything that they did. And I just wanted to do my part and be similar to them if I needed to be. But at that time, this is right before 9/11, so we're not at war, and we're at peace. But so growing up, I'd always wanted to serve. Things didn't quite work out. I did look into a couple service academies coming out of high school. I briefly attended Merchant Marines Academy in Kings Point, New York. I was there for less than 60 days, got hurt, had to leave, and then chose a different route once I was healthy. I could have gone back, but I chose a different route. So long story short of that part, kind of thought, my military career was over at that point. But as I was teaching, and I started looking into it a little bit more, and basically wanted to serve and be a part of something that was bigger than myself before I was 40, and regretted not doing it. So I started looking into the different branches and stuff, and ultimately chose the Army for various reasons. And so also you may wonder, why did I choose to go enlisted since I had a college degree, and why didn't I go be an officer? Great questions. And so this was my thinking at the time. As an officer, as a commissioned officer, you couldn't choose your job. So you could put down, 10 options, 10 things you wanted to do. But there's no guarantee, right? So, and I wanted to be a pilot. Now, I could have chosen to apply to be a warrant officer. No guarantee there. And then if I chose to be enlisted, I could choose a Black Hawk helicopter crew chief, which sounded pretty exciting to me. You get to fly on the helicopter, man the gun in the combat situations. Hopefully I don't have to use it, but and then the other things that the Army offered me at the time. So they offered to pay off my student loans, which they did. They gave me an enlistment bonus, and then after 3 years, I can apply to go to OCS or to warrant officer school at that point if I chose. And again, still no guarantees, but so I could take a little bit of those benefits that were given to me early on, and then if we chose to, we can apply to OCS or warrant officer school. And so that was kind of my thinking, and so we chose that route. And my family was okay with it, and obviously my wife was okay with it. And so that was our plan. Go enlisted, we'll see how it works out, and then we'll apply to be an officer if we want to stay in. If not, and again, this is right before 9/11, so a lot of things changed, of course. So that was kind of my thought process. Leaving teaching, also near the beach, living about 4 blocks from the beach, and choosing my first duty station was Fort Hood, Texas. And yes, I chose it because younger, growing up, I had lived in Texas for several years and enjoyed it there, and still had quite a few friends there. So I was thinking, of the choices I was given, hey, that wouldn't be a bad place. So we chose Fort Hood, Texas, and that's where we were going to go. So here I am in July 2001, and heading off to basic training. 25 years old. Basic training wasn't necessarily hard, meaning, yeah, there were some physical challenges, and once I got into good, I guess, Army shape, if you want to call it, I was okay with, the push-ups and stuff like that. I think the most difficult thing for me was being punished for others' mistakes. So the whole mass punishment thing, that used to drive me crazy. Like, for example, you've got to change uniforms, have your bunk look in a certain way, and be downstairs at a certain time. So we go, I do that, I get downstairs, there's a few of us down there, and then let's say there's 5 people that are late. Well, now all of us are being punished and, quote, being smoked, right? So we got to do a whole lot of push-ups and jumping jacks and all kinds of other activities. So that used to drive me crazy. I understand why the Army does it, and it's really that team aspect. Like, the team cannot be successful unless everybody is successful. And so we should have, stayed to help them get their stuff together, or whatever the case is and stuff. But ultimately, sometimes it was an individual's responsibility to do something, and I felt like, we were getting punished all the time. And so that was probably the hardest thing that I had to deal with, being there, besides, just being away from home, and that kind of stuff. So another interesting thing about basic training, and, so if you were good at the training, often if you were a first time go, meaning you were really good at the event and you completed it the first time, you might be the first one to go on KP. And what is KP? Kitchen patrol. So you're washing dishes, cleaning the DFAC. Now, some people liked it, some people didn't, whatever. I particularly didn't like it. And what I mean by if you are good at the training is, so if you are finished, if it's an all-day training event, everybody has to do it, but there's somebody in the kitchen facility doing kitchen patrol. So if you complete the training quickly because you're good at it, then they're going to put you in the van and take you back to the chow hall and make you do kitchen duty while they bring the people who are on kitchen duty, kitchen patrol, out there to the range or whatever it is to do the training. So there's a little bit of maneuvering and thought process maybe on how quickly you want to complete training. And of course, we kind of figured this out a little bit as we're going through. You don't know that until the first few times you're happening. Now, some people would rather go do that than stay out at the range or whatever, because sometimes they would make you do other things while you're out there at the range that aren't fun either. So, but anyway, you kind of got that feeling of, well, man, I was great. I did this, really good. And my reward is I get to go wash dishes, So that was not always something fun to deal with, which should have been a great premonition for how things were going to be. And in the regular Army, and we've talked about this for years amongst my peers and friends that I've been in, the hard workers just get more work. And that was an early example of that in basic training. So those were kind of like the most difficult things. Other than that, it wasn't too bad. You just be at the right place, right time, in the right uniform, clean your areas, take showers like you're supposed to, fold your blanket on your bed like you're supposed to, stuff like that. I mean, it just, as long as you do most of that stuff, it wasn't too big of a deal. But hey, so, like I've mentioned before, so 9/11 happens in basic training. So I left into July. I mean, so we're, 6-7 weeks in, and really I've got about 4 weeks left. I mean, so 9/11 happens, and I was out at the qualification range that day. So we are all qualifying on our weapons, which obviously is a required thing for basic training. And we noticed a lot of different activity going on around us, but we didn't know why. We didn't know what was happening. So we didn't find out till what actually happened that morning in New York City until probably 1800, so 5 or 6 o'clock, when we got back to the barracks area. And of course, pretty shocking. We're like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? What are we going to do? So some people that were from that area were allowed to use the phones to call home and talk to their family to make sure everybody was okay. And I think the rest of us got to call maybe the next day or so, just to, say, hey, we're alive here. We're still doing okay. And then the biggest thing they wanted us to make sure we told our families was training is going to continue. So as is. So training wasn't going to change. Our timelines weren't going to change. That everything was, we're not getting on a plane heading to war tomorrow. For us, we're still going to continue to train as normal and complete all of our required tasks. So while training didn't change, what did change was the stress level. So you could kind of tell that, the drill sergeants really started to emphasize details a little bit more, and this, if you do this wrong, you're going to get somebody killed in combat, kind of stuff like that. So that's what changed up until we graduated, which really was early October. So a month after 9/11, we graduated. And another thing that changed was our family day and how much time we typically had to see our families between graduation from basic training and when we headed off to our individual training assignment. Typically you have 3 or 4 days, I think, in there. And then I had a half day essentially with the majority of my family. I got to go eat a meal with them. And then I was able to spend the night, actually, yeah, I was able to spend the night with my wife at the hotel on post. But I had to get, permission to do that. And it was, not the easiest thing. So other than that, you pretty much had to go back to the barracks. So that definitely was different. And then once we left, the other thing that changed too was typically when you left basic training to go to your individual training assignment, if you were married or whatever, you could ride with them. They could take you up there or whatever. But this time we all had to ride the buses, no exceptions. So we had to ride the buses from there up to, I was going to Fort Eustis, Virginia from Fort Jackson, South Carolina. So I had to ride the bus up there. So that was, I guess less time to see your family, but things have changed, right? So, so we head up to Virginia and get ready for, individual training and, still what's going to happen, in the world. I mean, of course, Afghanistan is, there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of, stuff going on in the news about it. What are we going to do? Are we going to invade? All this kind of stuff. Well, what does that mean for us? Well, really, for us, we still got to go through our individual training. I'm not good to the Army, especially as a helicopter mechanic, until I go to get that training, right? So I, all of us have to go to our training. So we go on to our training, and my training for a Black Hawk helicopter mechanic is about 4 months of training. So we head up there and, begin our training. Nothing too crazy, honestly. Nothing any different up there. There's some security differences up there. Our past privileges on weekends weren't anything different as long as we met our physical fitness requirements. Our grades in school is a little bit more relaxed atmosphere because you're going to tech school essentially. And once you meet the certain requirements, you can go off post on the weekends and stuff like that. So, we're able to do that. And but a couple things I wanted to point out too that a lot of people may not know is, so for example, if you look at the timeline, I went up there in October. So I was there all the way till the end of March. So I'm there through Thanksgiving and Christmas. While we are afforded time off, with those holidays, we are allowed to take leave, which is our vacation time, and go home Thanksgiving and Christmas. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is that we have to pay to go home, to travel. So if it's, if you're in Fort Eustis, Virginia, and your family's, in California or wherever, my family was down in Florida, that's an expensive ticket, and you've only been in the Army so long and you only have so much money, so on and so forth. So a lot of families think, oh well, yeah, it's my soldier want them to come home, and well, they have to come home because they're shutting down for leave. Well, yes, they kind of sort of do, but they still have to pay to come home. So sometimes that's quite a bit of expense for your soldier to come home, even for Thanksgiving for just a few days, and then of course Christmas could be a week or two. So that's just something to keep in mind. Hey, I wanted to come home. My wife wanted me to come home, so we paid the money to fly me down there, and and had a great time. But kind of on another side note to that a lot of people may not realize with the paying for vacations and traveling and stuff like that. So we will often get stationed in Korea for a year. in Egypt for a year, in Honduras for a year, and it's called a 1-year hardship tour. And we're allowed 30 days of mid-tour leave. Now, again, that does count towards our vacation time, but the other thing is we still have to pay to travel home. So that's can be quite a big expense. So, but anyway, for me, yes, we paid it, wanted to do it. A lot of times it's worth it to get home and see your family. And for me, it definitely was. So pretty exciting to do that. And so as we kind of move forward, through the new year into 2002, I graduated AIT, and so I head back to Florida, where my wife is, and go on leave and vacation a little bit, and then it's time to pack the car up and head to Fort Hood, Texas. So this will kind of lead into next week's episode, where we talk about welcome to Texas, welcome to Fort Hood, the great place. And, there's a lot of discussion on whether that truly is the great place or not. But we spent 5 years there. And so, what is that like? What is that like, driving to your next duty, to your first duty station? I mean, is it, some of you may be familiar in the civilian sector with, getting a job that's out of state, and they're paying for the movers to move your stuff, and they pay you to drive over there, and then you go through the onboarding process where they welcome you into the company, and so on and so forth. Well, I'm here to tell you, in the Army, we do have similar things. The government will pay the movers to come and move all of our stuff, and we load up just our personal items plus our cats. At the time, we had 2 cats, but many people have other animals, and they have to move them and with them. So, we load up our stuff, and we load up our cats, and the movers had come and picked up all of our stuff and moved it to Fort Hood for us. And we're going to drive from Florida all the way over to Texas and get there. And all I know, though, is when I get there, I have to go to a place called reception, and I have a building number in my orders that say report to this building, and they'll tell you everything what to do from there. So I'm like, okay, can't be that bad. So we'll figure out the rest when we get there, right? And there's so many things that I'm not even sure I knew to think about, ask, but we discovered when we get to Fort Hood, a whole lot of challenges immediately. When we get there, where do we stay? What's the Army authorize us? The Army does pay for travel pay, but they didn't at the time in 2002. They didn't pay it to you up front, and we didn't have government travel cards. So there's a whole lot of money that we had to spend on the way. And then when I go through the reception process, which is like the onboarding process, and we'll talk about that next week, that's where I'll go through finance, and I'll get the travel pays and dislocation allowances and stuff like that. But again, I'm a brand new soldier. I have no idea about some of this stuff, and I'm just driving across country with my family and with my wife and my cats, and obviously having to stay in hotels that accept animals. You got the litter box thing going on, and paying for food in hotels out of our own pocket and keeping receipts. I heard you had to keep receipts, and hopefully once we get there, we'll get the money back, and but got to figure out how to get there, and where is this reception building, and what time do I have to be there, and all this kind of stuff. So and then also I'll throw this little tidbit in there. In April of 2002, when we start making that trip from Florida to Texas, my wife is pregnant, by the way. So, which is a great thing. We're super excited, but that kind of sets you up for a little bit, gives you a little more information about all the challenges that are about to hit us when we get to Fort Hood. So next week, we're going to talk about the first 60 days at Fort Hood, which was pretty challenging and somewhat ridiculous in some ways, and my meeting with a certain first sergeant a couple times, and some of the things that he did. I laugh now. I look back like, gosh, that was really silly and crazy, but it did happen. And there's some instances with getting my new beret and going from my patrol cap to the black beret there in the formation. And we'll talk about, out of those 60 days, how much I was actually home at Fort Hood living with my wife in those first 60 days. So, hey, again, thanks for joining in and for episode 2. And hopefully you learned some stuff about me, about, my first several months in the Army. And I look forward to your comments. I look forward to messages. I look forward to hearing what y'all think about it. So continue to listen, share with your friends and family if you think this is something that they want to learn about and listen. And can't wait to make the next episode and let y'all know about the first 60 days at Fort Hood. Thanks everyone for listening and hanging out with me today on Miller's Military Moments. If you haven't already done so, let your friends and family know about this podcast and our socials. Follow me, like me, share me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Miller's Military Moments. Until next time, have fun, reach out, and make your part of the world a better place.